Welcome to another episode of my Freedom Podcast. And today I'm very happy to have the first woman ever, Chloe Macintosh. You're a sex educator, relationship educator, and I'm very happy to have you here. Thank you for taking the time. Can you please introduce yourself? What do you do in this field?
Thank you so much. Very happy to be here and to have you here in Ibiza for having this conversation. My background actually is I started as an architect. So I trained as an architect. I come from Paris originally, then came to London and had a long career as an architect. I worked for Norman Foster. Then I moved into tech halfway through my life, needed a different way of experiencing what work is. And I had two kids. I have two sons now who are 16 and 18.
Wow.
And in 2019, just before COVID, I went to raise money for this startup that I have been experimenting with the idea of creating something in this space for almost 20 years. Researching the industry first for myself, realizing the gaps that are huge and also the misinformation that is prevalent, and started to think there is a business opportunity. And then as I went deeper into it, I realized, this is also a personal path. And so that personal path then became more the lead into how the business came about eventually, from a business opportunity to a real life experience project. So now I have an app called Kama that is really there to provide the best sex education available out there. And it's done in a way that's super practical through video and audio practices and tutorials. And we really address all the main questions that people are asking themselves, which today are relatively basic because there is no sex education. So when you ask people what they want to know, often they want to know really basic things: how to have an orgasm, how to last longer, how to pleasure a woman, how to give a good blowjob, That's what people are identifying with sex, is the different way we have sex.
And why do you believe is there so much non-education or misinformation about sexuality? Because I see many men, me included, are raised on porn. So this is like the first thing that you see, and for many years you think is this how you do it. Why do you think it's not educated properly?
I mean, it's a very loaded question because it comes from a long tradition of sexuality being tucked away from everything. Our culture, our lives, our creative expression. Sexuality is something that remains very private for people. Therefore, there is not a lot of learnings that happen just even peer-to-peer. So even at that first level, we don't talk about it a lot. And that's because of shame, of course, that's carried through various beliefs and institutional structures. Even the school system, the kids, they don't really get educated also in a academic way around sexuality. They only learn what not to do, how not to get pregnant, but no one tells them about pleasure. This is the idea of pleasure education, not just sex education. So it's many reasons that have prevailed, I think, that have mean that there is no equality also between genders, is because sexuality has been mostly orientated around reproduction and male pleasure. And as a result of that, it simplified sex to a point where it's not serving men either, because as you say, they get their pleasure by masturbating in a few minutes in front of an excessively sexual act that probably they will never experience themselves. So it's distorted to a point now where we don't just lose the ability to have good sex, but we also losing intimacy. Because in pornography, there is no kissing, there is no talking, there is no holding, there is no exchange, and there is no touching because it's made for the camera. So as that education, becomes so prevalent, there's a big distortion of behavior, and I think it's been the case in our society for various reasons, but it's continuing to be about the body is turned into an object of power. We have a very different association to the body than we should in our society. The visual representation of a body is a very, very big part of how we feel attraction.
Yeah.
And that model isn't conducive to healthy sexuality, to intimacy, to connection, because we have very strong visual signals around representation that are not realistic for neither men or women. Big cocks for men, perfect body for women, and at the end everyone is unsure whether they are not worthy or good enough to have the kind of sex that they see, in porn, for example. With no access to information, no places to practice, no acceptance that sexuality is an important part of our life. This is a very deeply rooted, cause that goes from oppression of women to religion to the patriarchal system that favors a lot of things around men, the lack of research. Only 3 to 5% of all research is done on women. So we have so little knowledge of even the pleasure anatomy.
Yeah.
Even investigating the body, which is accessible, we're not really doing that a lot. Maybe because we can't commercialize sex the way when we start enjoying sex and being really happy and fulfilled, it also affects consumerism, because when we are content and satisfied, we need less of what comes from the outside.
Stuff.
So that knowing and believing in oneself, accepting ourselves, lack of judgment, self-love, all the things that are needed for healthy sexuality are all the tools that are taken away from us through, the way society is designed. So I think there is all these things contributes to your question.
Okay, thank you. And what do you believe, how many men and women, let's start with women, are unsatisfied with their sex life?
Look, I don't know the ultimate answer based on the people who come to me. And of course, the people who come to me, this because they have a question, right? So that's also the case sometimes with the industry of conscious sexuality, is by the time someone finds them, they have something they want to address, because it's hard enough to find the right people in this industry still, because there's no platform, it's not organized, right? So it's hard to know where people are at, but my belief based on, as I say, through social, and also the app is relatively democratic, it's for anyone who wants to learn something. I would say that most people, there's two sides. One, they don't know what they don't know.
Okay.
Right? So there's a lot that they don't even know is possible. For example, a lot of men do not necessarily believe that they can have full body orgasms, that they can have more energetics, that they can last, that they can provide for something else than just, the pleasure in the moment, all of these things. Same with women, they lose hope and belief in what their body is capable of doing. So I think that there is, a misunderstanding that means that they are missing out on the things they don't know. And then in terms of satisfaction, what I find more and more is that sex in relationship is become very practical for people, and they really suffer from keeping the sensuality and the sexual tension. And there is a sense that in a long-term relationship, it goes. Yeah. And I don't believe that. I believe that you can be forever turned on by your partner if you work with the body, with the heart, with the energies, with the maintaining, with the looking at your relationship like a project, shifting a little bit the mindset.
So it's a lot related with the mind as well, no? With the mindset towards the relationship and towards sexuality.
Yes, and of course I would say the other layer is the personal experience through potential trauma, where then the body is resisting, because now the body cannot surrender or relax or feel. There is pain or numbness in the body through behaviors that maybe were not what we were looking for, but we didn't speak. And every single time we override ourselves, we break a connection within ourselves. We interrupt a pathway of unity between mind, body, and heart, where we are fully committed to what we do. So when we accept something because it's too late, or we actually deserving ourselves greatly to then feel the connection to the body that then we have to repair and rebuild.
And I know that there's women that never had orgasms or never have experienced them. Do you believe that there's women that can't have them, or it's just because they have not found somebody who matches their needs? What is the point there?
So the main point would be self-exploration, because if they are looking for a partner to unlock them, they are kind of delocalizing the responsibility, and that is never a good thing when we want to open ourselves to new things. It needs to be the trust needs to be really within us that we can do it. I do not know if there are any physiological reasons that someone would not be able to have an orgasm. They might be, but I would say the vast majority of people, given that they have access to their body and that they can surrender, can have orgasms. But I know many people, women in particular, who are in their mid-20s, mid-30s, and have not had orgasms.
Yes. And do you believe that something like Tantra or other practices can help women and men to have deeper connections? I mean, Tantra is such a big word now in our society, but what else is there that people can explore to find out more?
Yeah, so when people talk to me about Tantra, I know it's the go-to for something that's more intimate, more connected, where it's more conscious, right? It's the only thing we can think of. But actually, Tantra was just learning how to use the body for a specific outcome, you know, cultivating more life force energy, healing organs, you know, ascending deeper into spiritual awareness, like all these different things. This is what these practices were really designed for. Tantra was never to do with sexuality.
Yeah.
It was to do with using sexual energy, which is life force energy, as a source of healing, you know, rather than for a specific purpose related to sexuality. So my mission is to make great sex available to anyone using the resource such as Tantra, Taoism, also looking at neuroscience and building new pathways and how we can really reintegrate a practice, because Tantra is a practice fundamentally. You know, it works if you do it. And this idea that we should practice sex because we want to be good at it.
Yeah.
And to be good at sex, we first need to be good at pleasure. And pleasure is something only you can create for yourself. No one gives you pleasure. You are able to receive my touch with acceptance, I hope. And this is why consent is so important. Therefore, there is pleasure that comes with it. If I do this, it's not pleasure, but maybe if I do this, it's pleasure, because
pleasurable.
I've changed my attention and you can see that and you are able to receive it. So this Tantra is also about working with energy and not so much thinking of physical as the main attraction, but much more the energy of the person as the main attraction, and how we can breathe together, be present together, use touch to move energy, to increase sexual tension, resisting the immediate going to penetrative sex or have an orgasm, but actually nurturing that space before. And I find that very often with almost all the people I work with, what they're needing is intimacy before sex. They want to be more turned on, more live, more wanting to go into it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was a big game changer when I realized that it's not about the orgasm itself. You know, as a man, I grew up also thinking, based on what I was taught through movies and so on, that it's all about that moment, that 5 seconds, 10 seconds, I don't know how much man orgasm lasts, but like that seconds, you build up everything for that. And then one day I realized that 99% before and after is as much as beautiful as that moment. So I'm putting out much more effort in everything there, because actually what you remember later on when you think about the sexual act is this 99%, not that second. Yeah, that second you remember it because it was wow, but what you remember is the touches, the kisses, the positions, or whatever you did. And this is something is so important to cultivate that.
Yeah, and it's this idea, I think, also, which is true for everything we do in our life, that we need to enjoy the process. The magic is in being present with the process. when we can fully accept that each moment is exactly what we need to learn and exactly where we need to be, then that's when real magic happens across sexuality, but also anything that is to do with ourselves or others, manifesting or creating or working and doing anything like that. So the idea that the orgasm is almost an expectation, then your mind is not really here because it's chasing something that will happen, and that is supposed to be better than what you are currently experiencing.
Yeah.
And so it takes away your attention, it takes away the energy at the same time. So the secret is, as always for me, is just practicing presence and doing it using pleasure. Because unlike meditation, where we took this idea from the East that meditation is one of the secrets of our well-being, and it requires first to sit and not move and not think, which is difficult for most people, right? And also remembering that by the time the monk is sitting here for hours, he's been doing years of movement and years of breath work, so his body is still. We don't do that. We want to suddenly become meditators, and we forget the point of meditation is presence. It's not to meditate. So if you use pleasure, sensation, to be present, it's much easier. You feel your body, you enjoy it, it feels good. Your body starts releasing all the nice neurochemical, the dopamine and endorphin and all the good things. And so it does a lot for you. So the idea is we need to be more present during intimacy. We need therefore to practice presence. If we practice presence by learning new skills and ways to do that, then a daily practice around sexual wellness can really impact your mental well-being, your physical well-being, your relational well-being. So for me, it's my all-in-one. My sexual wellness practice, it covers all the corners.
So talking about this, there's this expression, if somebody is in a bad mood and it's like, oh, this person is badly fucked, So somehow it's true, no? Because if somebody doesn't receive pleasure, doesn't receive touch, doesn't receive attention, physical, their whole happiness level goes down in some way, right? Or at least with some pleasure and love, it could increase it by many.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, having a self-pleasure practice or a self-care practice that involves connecting to oneself, reflecting in oneself around our emotions, doing a bit of breathing that helps moving more of that, sexual energy upwards rather than downwards. Having therefore healthy intimacy, of course, is going to contribute enormously to your happiness. Because actually, when you ask people what's most important, what's the biggest contributor to happiness, they say relationships. Right? So it's the idea that relationship, instead of being so hard, become our biggest support in life, because we don't have expectations around partners. We are here to co-create a moment in life, and we agree how we want to do that, and then we can therefore manage expectation and have a sense of contribution, but while we're looking after our needs, which is the most important.
Yeah.
So the mood is, if someone isn't looking after their needs, they're likely to struggle more. Yeah. And if one of those needs is, I really want to feel more connected, or I want to release all my tension by having a really profound orgasm, and if they don't, that tension will hold. So maybe they can go and have exercise or do other things. Or scream. There's lots of things we can do to manage this. And I think it's our responsibility above anything else in life. Our only responsibility is to look after this temple as well as we can. Because then our contribution is already being, which is not doing, which is actually more important.
More being,
our thoughts, our actions, who we are, how we present ourselves, the energy that we bring along connects to our own daily practice and how much we commit to ourselves. And from there, we can serve others. From there, we can create things, like a relationship.
That's interesting. Thank you. Talking about relationships, one of my favorite topics, I think also yours. We have the modern society, the traditional relationship style, monogamous, committed, one-on-one. What about more poly things, more like multi-personal relationships, loverships? What is your take on that?
Yeah.
Like, what have you experienced, and what do you see in society?
Yeah, so I think about this a lot, because we have to be very careful, again, in our society, that we don't just polarize. We go from one extreme, and to repair the extreme, we have to go to the opposite extreme. So we go from one model, that's only acceptable, that's about monogamy and everything else is wrong, to blow that up, and now everyone wants to do everything. Multiple partners, open, conscious, play party, experimenting, temples, all the things. So I try to think, okay, but where is our balanced place? Where actually as human we feel good. And I think a lot of this extreme balance is coming from reframing who we are and breaking the institutions and forcing, a new reality, because we cannot no longer accept the way it was done. But for a lot of people, it's an exploration. We don't have the answer yet, right? You're exploring by going and seeing what it feels like to be in those places. I go and explore and think, okay, what's working here? What are we missing that is possible in those spaces? For example, during the retreat, we spend a lot of time as a group thinking about what would society feel like if sexuality was fully integrated, if it was part of everything from education to conversation to the arts to the places and spaces where it's okay for a group of people to explore sexual energy, to explore different types of intimacy without the judgment that now it's a sex party, for example, right? Because between the sex party that has sex in it and conscious spaces like temples, which have existed from a very, very, very long time ago.
Ancient times, yeah.
And they were spaces where people would go to learn. So it was a place of practice. It was a place of initiation. Younger men will get initiated with women that were on their second cycle. So after reproductive time, the woman goes into their second cycle, which has been sadly labeled as menopause in our society, where women of a certain age feel very dismissed by society and invisible, rather than recognizing the value that they bring, which is sexual energy that's no longer for reproduction, but sexual energy that's there to heal, to initiate, to show what it looks like and feel like when true feminine energy that's not about nurturing, survival, is about expressing that energy, happens. So without those spaces, we're also missing a huge contributor to balancing the overall energies in our world, because we have an excess of masculine energy, both in all genders. We have an excess of masculine energy coming from the crown, right? And then we have a lack of that feminine energy that's coming from the root, because we are not practicing. So men and women are not connecting to that energy by practicing and moving that energy. We don't have spaces where women can be truly expressed as sexual beings. It's very difficult to find. As soon as a woman looks sexual, the gaze is she wants sex.
Yeah.
She doesn't want sex. She wants to express her sexual nature that can go very, very far, further than we've ever seen. So the lack again of understanding for, it's not just about relationships, it's also about where do we learn our skills and how do we feel comfortable in society to be in a work environment and not have situations like Me Too, where the lack of understanding about how to relate turns into, a movement against men, for example. And a witch hunt in the other way. Because again, we're repairing these extremes. So the idea with relationship is a matter of exploration. It's important, I believe, that at one point in your life, you give yourself permission, and therefore society has to not shame you for it, to go and have other types of relationship than maybe the one that is constructed in your upbringing, and just challenge how much of that is a belief, how much of that is a construct, or how much of that is your intuitive desire to be just with this one person, which I think is very valid, very beautiful. One of the reasons why we evolved as, sapiens is because we came together and faced each other. We stood up, we faced each other, and we created intimacy, right? So these were two people, not five people. Yeah, they were two people that decided to do this together, right?
Yeah.
So we need to remember that we are, I think, one of those species that works well as a duo. It's the way that life works. But if you think of community setting, they may be like a primary partnership, but they still be safe spaces to explore a desire. So let's say you're in a relationship for 5, 6, 7 years, and you realize that you have a desire to explore something.
Yeah, to explore other men,
It could be to
women.
explore anything that is different from what is already there. And today, for someone to be able to communicate that without the risk of challenging the entire relationship and creating chaos as a result is quite difficult. So it's at the beginning of the relationship is being clear that we want to be together, but we need to leave space for change. Who can say, I'm going to be the same person wanting the same thing forever?
We change all the time.
We change, and with the change sometimes comes the question. If I cannot explore the question, it will be repressed, and it will eventually turn out in a negative way. So the idea is, can I at least tell my partner, look, I want to go in a safe space to tell you something. Can we sit down and communicate to
The
you?
man is already sweating when he hears that. Because I know that in my own relationships, for myself, for many years, I was not confident and not sure enough and comfortable enough to share my truth. I was hiding a lot, my fantasies, my desires, my ideas, my whatever I wanted to explore. So I know that many men and many women out there, they have desires and they don't know how to express that. They're afraid of it.
Totally. And this is why education is so important. Education is creating a new truth that why don't you ask those questions to your partner? Why don't we do little exercises when we meet people or when we start to maybe want to be more serious with them?
Yeah.
It's very delicate because the early stage of relationship are very delicate flowers. And we all know that. So at the same time, you want to be honest, but you also want to leave enough space for things to take their shape naturally and not just come with, okay, this is me. So there is no one answer, but conversations, what you're doing, what I do with the app, with the retreats, following some people who seem to have a good narrative, that's how we learn a bit more. And it gives us permission to realize that if we do not connect to our desires, we are changing our reality towards less of the things we truly want. We have to own our desires. We need to be able to speak our desires because through our desire, we create reality, the reality that we really want to live in. Everything else is the delay or a lie or rejection of a piece of ourselves. And that's never going to grow to be beneficial over time, right? So it's also me as I help also couples a lot on one-on-one basis. And it's just having the conversation around, okay, there is an imbalance in our relationship. One person, let's say, wants more sex than the other. We're starting to ask questions whether we should be open because maybe we have different needs. First, the relationship has a lot of opportunities already before we try to fix something with something external. I always say that if you are going to explore out of the relationship, it can only be because it enriches the relationship.
Yeah.
It needs to feel nourishing and expansive for both people involved. Even if you decide to explore on your own, I need to be supportive of that because it's what you truly want. And we know what we have I'm clear what we have. I'm not thinking, but is he really committed to me? I need to know.
Yeah, that
What
whatever
are
happens,
your-
you're committed to. Often in relationships, I see that one partner wants to do one thing and the other one wants another thing. How do you deal with that? Like, as a partner, should you, in your opinion, lean into what the other one wants, or is there some point when you say, okay, we're not compatible? Where's the line?
It's really delicate. So let's say we take an example where a person would like to explore outside of the
Yeah.
relationship and the other person is not ready. It happens very often. I've seen that one person is not ready. They go to their next relationship and they're ready, and now they're with someone who doesn't. It happens a lot, you know, because we learn with also what the discomfort. So sometimes we have an experience with one relationship where we learn, and then we can apply this better and start magnetizing people that are more aligned with us. So also taking the journey as an experience for learning ourselves and not having a set idea, because maybe again you're just rectifying an extreme, you know, by wanting to go and explore, you know, what is it that's really missing. I would say the first place to establish is to find balance again and satisfaction within the relationship. Absolutely necessary. So if there is not enough sex, or sex isn't satisfying, there needs to be first some investment around understanding why that is. And then it needs to create a space and an understanding, and this is only done through self-work, that the person's desire has nothing to do with you.
Yes, it's not something external.
This can only happen when you have accountability for your own emotions, and that doesn't mean deal with your own emotion like sometimes in the conscious space, you know, it's a bit like you left on your own. No, it's very important in partnership to care for each other, to hold each other, to nurture each other's feelings, to be there for each other if that's what we commit to doing, but not as a codependency while nurturing self-reliance in the other person. So giving them the confidence, I'm here for you. I'm, you know, let's discuss how can this be good for you. Would you like to watch? Would you like that there is boundaries in this experience? Maybe sharing what is it you're really looking for. Do you want to be validated? Do you just want to have sex because you just like missing it? Do you want to experience something different?
Maybe it's a kink, you know, because I'm finding out more and more about this whole industry in the kinks and so on, where I was like, wow, what people like sometimes is crazy, let's say. So, you know, and just because I maybe don't like it, but I see that it gives pleasure to some people. And for example, one of the big revealings it was maybe this summer, or last summer, it was that actually it can be beautiful to see your partner or the person that you really love and you really like and you really have some feelings for making love to another person. And you watch that. And I always thought, okay, this is pervert, or I don't know, this is like a twisted mind. And I understood that it's like, because when you're making love, for example, you and me, in this perspective, and then we add the mirror. The mirror is another perspective, right? That's why everybody loves the mirror, to make love in front of the mirror, because you see yourself from a different perspective. And now you add another layer of perspective, which is you not even participating, just seeing positions and the face and the expressions and so on. It's something very beautiful, because you see that person having such a joy and such a blissful time, and you can just also not be thinking about your performance. Am I doing right? Am I doing wrong? You can just enjoy her or him having pleasure, and you can relax. It's something so beautiful. And to open up to that is something very difficult sometimes.
Yeah. So I feel there's two things. The first thing is, are we looking for further visual stimulation to get more turned on because we want to feel more turned on? And that usually would be balanced better with a practice of your own, where you cultivate your sexual energy, you turn on, you know, you don't use extra stimulation in order to feel turned on. The second part of it is what you describe is compersion. Compersion is when I have pleasure because you have pleasure. It's one of the most challenging relational emotions, but also one of the highest, because it's very unconditional, you know, in a sense. And as we know, love is not something we give, receive, share. It's a state. It's a condition that is related to the frequency of our heart, our ability to be in the pleasure of another with no attachment. That's partially what compersion is. And in a relationship, what you describe, I take pleasure because my partner has pleasure. The focus should be around how they're feeling pleasure. But of course, the visual can become a really strong point of arousal that can also enhance the experience. And I think in a similar way, being watched by your partner, being fully accepted, to be seen, is also something that can really liberate a person. But it's just not for everyone. Some people have no desire at all. It's the least thing they can think of to see their partner having sexual something with someone else. So it really depends where you're at in your arousal landscape, and what are the other things that you've already experienced with. Because the thing with this type of more visual sex is there is no satisfaction in it. There is also, it's a problem with porn. People intend to watch porn that's way more violent and way more intense. And
it always goes more intense,
and it goes
right?
more and more. So again, if we can just be in our body and closing our eyes and seeing how much can I truly feel when I'm just inside myself, in connection with another, more energetically, that's always a good place to know how deep is the intimacy, and also how available you are with your heart, how available you are with your presence. Because the more open-hearted, which means not worrying to share love for what the other person may interpret it as, be in a complete loving, as if this is as if you're falling in love completely with that person. That's open-hearted. It's not holding back of being more romantic or loving because of the concern that it will be misinterpreted by the person,
or misused,
and then there will be some consequences, such as I have to then follow up. They might think I want a boyfriend or girlfriend. That's also what's limiting people to have the right kind of the more profound and aligned sexual experiences, is that without an open heart and the ability to be really open to a situation without judgment and without thinking of what happens next, it's also not really possible to fully connect. You will not experience the deepest connection if there are always ideas about, should I do that? Should I not do that? What does that mean for them? Am I, because when you move energy with presence, with an open heart, it is so powerful for people. They have never experienced that before. They will identify this as falling in love. So a lot of people who are very in touch in that way will always have to be very clear with partners about that experience and what it represents, because otherwise there is a risk that this will be misunderstood, because the connection is so profound that you think it must be special. It must mean we can do this.
Yeah.
But if you're trained, you can access anyone's energy that way.
And have incredible experiences without the attachment.
Absolutely.
Or the direct imagination of a relationship or anything.
Exactly. It's almost like your relationship is where the partner, and then those other things would be where you train, where you learn, when you explore. And if it's done consciously, with a lot of honesty, and really it nourishes the main relationship, this could work really well. That's one model that I see could work. With polyamory, I have to say that I'm yet to understand really how it works outside of a community space, where people don't just share that, but they share the responsibility of life, of children, of living.
Economically, maybe.
Yes,
as well.
And then it's different. I've seen some really beautiful setup, where it seems to work with people. And I think it's if that's what you are tempted with, and more people are more tempted to try new things, then I think it's a great place for people to grow a lot as individuals.
Yeah,
a lot.
Because you have to do a lot of work with yourself, no? Always recenter, what do I want? Because what I see often, what happens to me also, that you meet different people and you try to accommodate to everybody. Okay, this person loves it more like this, and here I don't want to hurt her or whatever. And I realized that the most important thing is that I know what I want. That I am like focused on, okay, what it feels good for me. And if that feels aligned with somebody else, we can go together.
Exactly.
And if not, I don't know if I want to adjust too much. Otherwise, you're just like a plastic bag in the wind, adjusting to everybody. But it's important to know what you really want in that sense, in order to not be imbalanced.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, asking for what you want. So, one of the great thing about those conscious spaces, and we know that in some way BDSM is the most conscious space, because you have to be so careful with everything. So actually people end up being extremely good at holding space and presence and all this, because that's part of what's needed. But I think that's, the most important is to be also be able to communicate, because very often in sexuality that is within a relationship, we become relatively muted about our desire, our wants. I was with a group here the other day, and I was saying, you need to know while you're having sex, is this what's happening in that moment? Is it for you or is it for the other person? Because sometimes someone is having sex with you in a particular way that it looks like it's for you, and it's not. It's how they have pleasure. So if you can communicate, it's also about, is this for you? Okay, I'm going to help you have what you enjoy.
Yeah.
But now we're going to do it the way I want to receive it, and you move less, and I'm going to show you, and I'm going to ask you how I want it for my pleasure. And in this communication, if it becomes easier for people to ask, to open, to say, oh, I feel a little bit of pain here, just wait a sec, actually say what's going on. Not so that it's a talking experience,
but the other person
you
realizes
know where you're at.
Yeah, what
And then it means that, let's say, also it repairs the imbalance between, let's say, the male partner often feeling very responsible for their pleasure and their own, and never really being able to fully embody the experience, because they also responsible for, the more
female
passive
orgasm.
archetype of a woman who thinks great sex happens when they lie almost inactive on their back. And yes, there is a way for that sex to happen, but that means you know exactly what you're doing with your body.
Yeah.
You can bring it into yourself. Otherwise, you got to go find it. You got to move towards what you want and repair, and have maybe the male part, the masculine part, holding back more, doing less, receiving, and then the woman moving on to them, showing or learning with their body how it feels, until maybe they can go into something more, spontaneous, and maybe there is less communication. There is a place where you don't need to speak, but it does require some adjustments.
I see. Very interesting. There's so much. This topic like really fascinates me more and more. And I mean, we met on my birthday, which I organized I would say conscious temple events where people could connect and explore sexuality in a free way, and explore. And it was beautiful to see how people, when they are invited to be free and to explore, what they actually do, and how they open up and experience new things. So I know that you're organizing this retreat called Embodied Love, and I saw that you posted something about how 2024 it's going to be the new art of retreats, that people are tired of let's say yoga retreats and these things. So tell us a little bit more about your retreat and why people should be interested in that.
Right. Thanks for that. Yeah, so we started to create this Embodied Love retreat in Ibiza. The idea really was to create a space for 6 days where we would experience what it feels like, where intimacy, sexuality, sensoriality, sensuality, but also physical embodiment are part of our everyday life. And so we create a very kind of practical lifestyle. So you almost move into this lifestyle together as a group of around 20 people if you in a relationship or not. The last retreat we had a polycapsule of 5 people, a couple had been together for 27 years, a couple that had been together for 17, a lot of singles, so it was very much around people being called, because it's the beginning of this, kind of experience also for me. So it's also co-creating process. And the idea is that we create a rhythm of, if you live this every day, you will be addressing all aspects of what's currently probably missing in your life, from cultivating life force energy through breath work first thing in the morning, which really we should do like religiously every day, to primal moves, to really get people into their body, because a lot of the time with sexuality or intimacy or sexuality retreats, we take sexuality and we put it on its own.
Okay.
And it's only about that. My method is more, sexuality is a pillar of life. Let's put it back amongst all the other things and experience what happens to eating, sleeping, touching, talking, exercising, relating when sexuality is aware and conscious. And it means that we do this strong embodiment, because very often if people are struggling to go into intimacy, it's because they're in their head. So dropping them into the body is really important. So for us, the physical aspect is a key part of the success for this program. Then we have this workshop afternoon, which are very practical tutorial where we learn practical skills. So we talk about suction sex and how to really think of penetration differently from friction-based sex, and how we can work with the anatomy of the body. I have silicone props where I show the pussy, the cock, how we can do it.
Amazing.
In this tradition, how they do it. In this tradition, what can we learn? And it's a debate. So people also bring their own experience, and we learn a lot from each other. How they have sex, where do they like it. We also have practices that are very focused around the pleasure system and sharing our favorite practices and techniques, for masturbation, for sex. How do you have sex? What's your favorite way to have sex? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
You learn so much about yourself. It also normalizes what you think may be lacking in you. And actually you realize everyone is very much on the same path here, And then in the evening, we have the temple nights, which are body work, interoceptive awareness practice, where we learn to become more sensorial, resensitizing the body. This idea that we live in a society where we're totally desensitized, because we don't use touch, we don't smell anything, we're covered in clothes, and then we end up like numb, like in many places, including the genitals. So how do we resensitize? How we do things during the day that connects us to our senses at the 1,000. Because every moment, like now, I haven't stopped connecting with what's outside. I feel the wind, I have my seat bone, I know exactly how they're balancing, I connect with my points of contact, I smell, I breathe in my belly. As I'm doing everything, I'm reconnecting myself to my body. So it's not something you do in a practice, or you go to a retreat and you have this great experience, and then you come home and you don't know what to do. This is the opposite of that.
It gives you tools for your daily life.
Super cool tools that are easy to plug in, and that will transform not only how you relate to your body, but also your level of happiness, and also your relational dynamic, because we do a lot of paired practice. And in this case, as you know, it's not about actually working with your partner as much as it is to work with a body, and starting to dissociate from who they are. Do I like them? Do I want them to touch me? To let me be present and listen to my body and follow my body's desire and communicate. I would like you to start touching me here. Okay, that feels good. Now I would love you to give me a belly massage, and then this exchange that comes from what I want to receive. And it's receiving. So it doesn't matter who's giving it to you, as long as they're present and respond, because that's this idea that we don't receive. We're in the doing, not in the being. So the retreat shows you how to be embodied as a way of life, how to be sexually aware and turned on, and how to manifest and speak, your desire, so that you can find more points of contact with life. that are satisfying, that are making you feel like you are connecting truly with what you want. And we have 3 retreats coming up. The next one is in March. And for me and my partner, so I work with Nick, who is the founder of Primal Moves. And I have to say, having a male counterpart who is very much in the physical embodiment, very grounded in practice and knowledge that is deep. And I come more with the ethereal of intimacy, all the unseen, all this in between.
The feminine.
Right? And so it works really amazingly together. And I think it also helps a lot of men who probably don't feel called to go to a sexuality retreat.
Yeah.
But this is very much like half about physicality, present, all the masculine qualities as much as the feminine qualities.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, I've not been there, but knowing you, knowing Ibiza, knowing the circumstances, I can only recommend it. Let's see if I can also come.
Yes.
And
please.
I'm super interested in those topics, and I could go on hours and hours to talk about these things, and hopefully we can talk more in the future.
I hope so.
But I believe it's the moment to wrap it up. And I hope that this was a helpful interview, that you could learn something. Feel free to reach out to Chloe or to me, or come to one of those retreats and, open up your minds a bit more in the topic of sexuality, because it's something so sacred, but also something so basic and natural.
And fun.
And fun,
Isn't
yes.
it fun?
It's super fun.
It's the best.
It's the best, yeah. So thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure here talking to you. And I wish you all the best for your projects. And I will check out also the Karma app a little bit. And it's not a paid advertisement. It's just that I want to support it.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you so
appreciate
much. Have a beautiful day.
it. Thank you.